Hi, my name is Brad McIntyre, and today I want to talk about memorizing a solo performance script. If you're putting together a one person show for the theater, it can be very intimidating to look at 20 to 25 pages of dense monologue, like dense text, and just commit that to memory. It seems like the Mount Everest of memory activities for a normal actor. And, especially if you're like coming from the world of commercials and film and industrials where you only have to memorize a little tiny bit of text at a time and you can forget it immediately after it's recorded, after they get the takes. So, for those of you that kind of struggle with memorization, that's what this video is about. I struggle with memorization as well, and I'm pretty well steeped in solo performance. I do solo performance all the time. The only difference is that I'm not really intimidated when I see a 20 to 25 page script of text. It doesn't faze me. I just kind of look at it and sigh and basically say, "Ooh, time to get to work." So that's what I want to go over today. It's amazing to me that people that are not actors, not in the performing arts, sometimes they're most impressed with people who can memorize. Like, oh my gosh, how did you memorize all those lines? That's incredible. And I always think to myself, uh, it's sort of an inside baseball thing, but if you're in the theater, memorization is just like part of it. In fact, the longer you're in the theater, you kind of realize that's not even the exciting part about the rehearsal process. Memorization is just like that kind of tedious slog through part that you have to get through in order to get to the fun part of actually putting together a character in a play. And it's no different in solo performance. Whether you're playing one character for an hour on stage or an hour plus, or if you're playing multiple characters throughout the monologue throughout the solo performance, you should. My recommendation is that you commit the script to memory, and you commit the script to memory as closely as you would commit a Shakespeare play, or Eugene O'Neill, or Sarah Rule, or like some other established playwright in history. Like you should actually pay attention to the words, especially if you wrote them, because here's a danger. This comes up to me for me all the time. I get up on stage, and sometimes, if for a script that I wrote myself, I am tempted to rewrite the script while I'm performing the show. Like present Brad thinks he's somehow more clever than past Brad, who wrote the script and put a lot of effort into finally tuning and finally crafting a script. Brad, in the moment, in front of an audience, thinks he can just improvise the lines a little better for some reason. It never works out well. Sometimes I hear words differently while I'm performing it, but very seldom is it really good. I have this very active, this might happen to a lot of people, but I have a very active, like, thesaurus in my head that thinks of words that are like the words that are actually in the script, and that's what I say out loud. And usually those words are not as good as the words that are originally there, the ones that I actually took time to write into the script. So, this video is going to be about heading that off. If you just memorize the script as it is written and don't rewrite it on stage in real time in front of other people, it will help you. It will help you. You can fine-tune a set performance and find out more about that. It gets deeper as you do it, too. The more you perform the same script, the more you will discover as a performer, the more you will discover as you go along in front of different audiences, in different cities, in different venues. As you perform it, you will discover more perspectives and different dimensions of that work. If you honor the work, if you stick to the script. So today I'm going to talk about, how do I do that? How do I go about memorizing a script? First thing, It is not, I don't have any shortcuts. I don't have any shortcuts whatsoever. I have yet to learn any really fast hack for learning a script faster. It is still a game of repetition and concentration. I know some people that like they'll I have a good friend, he'll record himself reading the script out loud and then he'll play that before he goes to sleep at night. I don't, maybe it helps him. That kind of thing has never helped me. I do find that I run the lines in the car. I run the lines whenever I, if I'm in the shower, sometimes I'll repeat little sections of the script so it stays fresh in my memory, but really it's just a matter of doing it over and over again. So, how do you start this process? How do you start the process of hardwiring the script into your head? Well, recently I performed a show at a local Fringe festival close to where I live in North Texas. It's called the Fort Worth Fringe Festival, and the play that I was performing is the Beast was the Beast of Hyperborea. It is a Victorian adventure fiction play where, as a solo performer, I play multiple characters, and I've been directing another actor. That guy I just mentioned, actually, Jeff. He's been performing it for the last year and a half, and I have not performed my own play, since 2019. So, though I am familiar with the play, I have not had to perform it myself in a long time. So, the familiarity actually helped me in the memorization of it because I've seen it now performed in front of me by this other person multiple times. I've rehearsed with this guy multiple times. So, it's kind of fresh in my memory, like the story structure as a whole, but that's different than actually saying the actual lines on stage. So, here's what I usually do. I start at the beginning of the script, and I read the script. I read the script all the way through. I read the script before I even start memorizing the lines. I read the script, I don't know, maybe half a dozen times. And when I say I read the script, I sit down and pore over the script. I don't instantly start trying to learn the lines. The reason I start reading the script automatically is or right off at the start, is because I want to know what the story is, what the shape of the story is, what does this lead into this next thing, which leads into this next thing? What are the important points I need to pay attention to that transition me from one scene to the next scene, or from one interaction to the next interaction? How does it move along? How does the story move along? As I'm doing this, I'm paying attention to the words, but not in a detailed way. I'm looking for like little pivot words. So not adjectives, not like descriptive words, but more like we traveled, we ventured forth, we encountered, like verbs, basically verbs. But verbs that don't necessarily, there's verbs that like tell what the characters are doing, but these are verbs that move the story along. Like the move it from one thing to the next thing, one scene to the next scene. So I'm paying attention to this, like what's the linking language? And then I get more granular and I concentrate, and I start at the beginning of the play and get up on my feet. As soon as I've read through it and I've paid attention to reading through it, I haven't just automatically read through it, but I've paid really close attention to making my way through the play. Then I try to get up on my feet as soon as possible. The reason for this is because I'm going to be on my feet when I'm doing it on stage. So, unless I'm doing the whole thing sitting down at a desk or something, a la Mike Daisey or something, or Spalding Gray, I get up and move around. This also begins kind of matching up some of the early blocking with the words in the play. And those things, that link kind of helps cement it into my brain, into my memory as well. But I start on the first page and I start with the first lines and I work through the first paragraph, the first half page until I get that down pat, and then I move on to the next half page. And then page by page, I make my way through the play. By the time I get to the end of the play, the beginning of the play has been just naturally hardwired into my skull. And I pay attention very closely to the adjectives, descriptive words that are used, little turns of phrase. For instance, the play that I'm doing is set in the 1890s, and it is written in that vein of like Victorian adventure fiction. And so some of the sentence structures are very old-timey. There's no slang in this play. And so kind of getting in the spirit of it is hand in hand with performing it over time, like performing it time and time again. And when I can get in the spirit of it, as soon as I hear the words as they're written in the script, it kind of clicks me into that universe, if that makes sense. Here at my house, I rehearse in this tiny office, which is a nice thing about solo performance. Or if my wife and my kiddo are out of the house, I usually make my way into the living room. In fact, this B-roll that you're watching is me working in my living room, trying to get past the first couple of pages of the script. But I say the word over and over again. I say the words in the script. I read the script, say the words, look back down at the script, say the words again, and I keep going back and forth until I can just say the words without looking at the script. Now, memorization works in waves, so to speak. The first is just getting acquainted with the script. The next kind of tier up is when you have the script memorized, but while you're doing the play, you can actually see the script in your mind. Like, you can tell what you're saying is at the top of the page or the bottom of the page. Like you actually in your mind see the script, the actual words, the text. And then the next step up, the next tier up, is when you can just tell the story. You can tell the story, you can say all the words in the play, and you can do it at the drop of a hat. Like, you could just click in. That's where you want to be. You want to be where you know the play like the back of your hand. But it's a very slow, repetitive process to get there. So let me kind of run you through this rehearsal process that I put together, kind of here as you're seeing me rehearse in my living room. Is I've started on the first page, and I'll talk through the first page, and when I hit a point where I can't remember what the word is, or I look back down to the page and realize I got the word wrong, or and this happens a lot, I just skipped over a chunk for some reason, like I linked some part of the paragraph with some other paragraph and skipped over the bottom of that first paragraph. I go back and get that. Because if you memorize it wrong, you'll perform it wrong. There's been many times in the past where I thought I memorized the play great, and then I go back and look at the script months later, maybe after multiple performances in front of people at different fringe festivals and different venues and theater events. And then I realized, I've been skipping over that one little bit the whole time. I didn't even realize it. I am not the ideal person to be addressing you this afternoon. It is by default that I am here and not one of my esteemed colleagues. I suppose being the lone survivor of the horrendous debacle which I'm here to recount is all the credentials, is all the qualifications I need. Now, the argument could be made, the audience never sees a script, they don't know. But here's the thing, and I operate by the Peter Brook rule of rehearsing. Peter Brook, the famous English director who worked most of the time in Paris, and just passed on a couple of years ago, bless his heart. In his 90s, still making theater. But Peter Brook famously went backstage in the last production of Conference of the Birds, which was one of his plays that was playing in Paris. And his actors had been rehearsing it for months, and then they performed it for months. And when I say months, I mean like a year, maybe. I can't remember the exact time limit. But Peter Brook was with a friend, and he went backstage, and the friend thought, oh, Peter Brook is just going to like wish these guys good show on their final performance of this play. But instead, Peter Brook whipped out like a little notepad, and he started giving notes. And the notes were like super granular, like, hey, you, person number 5, you need to pick it up in scene 3 in the second part of the play. Hey, you, sir, just watch your volume on the third scene in the first act, because I couldn't hear you. It wasn't as clear. They were really granular notes. And the actors nodded and thanked him and smiled. And then Peter Brook's like, hey, everybody, good show. And they left. And as they were walking around the front, the friend turned to Peter Brook and he said, haven't these guys been performing this play for like nearly a year? Why are you still giving notes? And Peter Brook, with a completely straight face, turned to his friend and said, why should this audience be deprived a potential improvement? And that's why he's Peter Brook and nobody else is Peter Brook. Because why? Yeah, why should that audience be denied a little bit better show than the last time you performed it? You should get better every time. So, here's what I do. I look at the page, look away, look back at the page, look away, look at the page, look away, and I work through it until I get the whole section that I'm working on down pat, and then I go into the next section bit by bit by bit. So that's how I memorize it. I haven't found any hack around it. It's just a matter of concentration. You can't multitask while you're memorizing. You got to get your head in the game. That's a lot harder nowadays than it used to be. I'm old enough to have like one foot in analog in my younger years and then my other foot in the digital era here. And I will admit, my attention span is way shorter than it used to be. I consume content that is bite-sized all the time, and it makes this kind of work a lot harder to actually focus on something for an extended period of time and really, really concentrate on a granular level. But it's what I find that you have to do to memorize a play. To memorize the words, you got to work at it bit by bit by bit by bit. I know some people that memorize it in chunks, like they take the first act and they get it down pat, and they do the second act until they get it down pat. I work it just chronologically through so that I can link the story up as I'm memorizing it. And admittedly, it's usually a festival length sort of thing. So that's what if it helps you, cool. If you're memorizing a solo performance off the page, off of a script that somebody else wrote or that you wrote yourself, don't get down on yourself. If it looks like it's taking a long time, it probably is taking a long time. It's just one of the longer parts of the process. Just accept that. Like, embrace the suck and keep going. It'll get better. Everything gets better. You just have to like suffer through it. Like, you just have to grind it out. But then you get better. And it's like anything else. It's like learning anything else. Repetition helps. And it's necessary. You just have to do it over and over and over and over again. Until you know it like the back of your hand. If you're curious about this, I wrote a book called Crafting the Solo Show. There's like a small chapter on memorization where I go into a little bit more detail. And if you're putting together a one-person show for the theater to take around to theater venues and fringe festivals, or produce it at your own company or a company you're associated with or something, I've tried to put down all my thoughts that I've won the hard way, like over time through experience and my own observations. And I put it together into the kind of book that I would want to read when I was starting out. Anyway, it's available. I'll put a link down in the thing. But go grab a copy, and there's a little bit more detailed explanation of how I memorize my solo shows. Um, anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, take it easy. I suppose being the lone survivor of the horrendous debacle, which I'm about to recount, is all the credentials. Is all the qualifications I need. Well, let's crack on. I've compiled my own notes and diary entries to put it clear, to lay out I've compiled my own notes and diary entries to lay out as clear a picture, admittedly from my own perspective, of what transpired on the Hyperborean expedition. I shall do my best to keep alive the spirit of my dearly departed colleagues, and give as close an approximation of their own voices as I can muster.